Hey guys, it's me, the Mask. Smoking. Somebody stop me. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's talk about this dang movie. Everybody knows The Mask, right? Honestly, I have no idea at this point. I'm 25, and what I know isn't something that people all over the world know, and, that makes me mad. It's also like a thing with Warner Brothers and IPs, but I'll get into that later. Hi, I'm Uni. Welcome to my video, where I'm going to ramble about the making of, the ins and outs of, and fun extra tidbits of The Mask, 1994. From New Line Cinema, starring Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz and a dog, directed by Chuck Russell, based off the comic from Dark Horse Comics, are using the medium of film, which was created in It's 2024, and that means The Mask turns 30. Wow. Happy birthday. The film is more important than you would actually think. It, along with plenty of other things, have really affected the film landscape that we see today, for better and for worse. July 1994 was the big date of release. Alright, let's see what we got going again. Oh shit, Baby's Day Out? Forrest Gump. Truly, The Mask was the underdog in this part of history. Okay, here we are, the 29th. Barcelona, Black Beauty, Foreign Student, and It Could Happen to You. I guess The Mask had nothing to worry about. Oh shit, Angels in the Outfield? Yeah!
Grand slam home run. And Good Morning America's Joel Siegel calls it a big hit.
Classic. But we're here for something a little less holy. Too much! So what is The Mask, for those who don't know? Well, in short, it's the story of a man who never seems to get his way, and is too mild-mannered and timid to do anything about it. That is, until he comes across a strange mask that, once put on, allows his inhibitions to run wild and wreak havoc through cartoon gags in his realistic setting. Based on the 1985 graphic novel from Dark Horse Comics, who is also known for comics like Hellboy and Sin City. It was originally envisioned to be a horror comic due to how graphic and scary some of the imagery in the comic was, which is why New Line called up Chuck Russell, who had done work on A Nightmare on Elm Street, most notably the third one, and they did this because they were looking for a new Freddy Krueger, new horror franchise. You get the idea. However, upon reading the comic, Chuck felt that it could be reworked into a comedy, which led New Line to respond with no, and went on to make scripts for the production without him. However, the scripts were not looking good, and eventually they went back to Russell saying, what was that thing he said about the comedy? And that's when things started to kick off. Now, I've read the original comics. They're pretty good. I like them up to a certain point, and I may refer to these comics as the video goes on, because now we're going to go through the beats of the film. Hi, this is a post-video note. So, in this video, while we go through the movie, anytime you see official footage from the Mask film, it's going to have a watermark over it. So, the whole time involving any footage that I was able to acquire from the actual film, it's going to have a big VTU over it. And that's because I have really tried. I'm like up to the 20th attempt to get past the copyright system. And I really didn't want to resort to this, but this seems to be the only way that I can actually get through this upload. I've dealt with this kind of stuff before, but it's been a while, and this particular video type is my first attempt at it, so it's kind of sloppy. How I approached it. I guess if I were to do it again another time, it would be better, but thankfully it's only around a half the video. There is other content involved that I don't need to put a watermark over. But yeah, I kind of wish that this wasn't the case. But the Warner Brothers and yada yada yada. Just bear with it, and I really do hope you enjoy the video because I put a lot of work into it. I'm gonna grab a snack. Would you like some Reese's Pieces or sour worms? I'm going to have both, but I'm only going to give you some of one, because they're mine. This actually reminds me of one of the dozens of times I've seen The Mask. It was the time with a friend, and we had a chicken with some mac and cheese. But for the occasion, we used green food coloring. We called it mask and cheese. Things got weird in the bathroom, but that's all I'll say. Are you comfortable?
DVD.
The movie starts off with an establishing shot of Edge City. Now, Edge City is a fictional city that's pretty much a mixture of all the famous US cities, with little drops of a 1940s aesthetic. Now, it's not set in the 40s. It just takes inspiration from it. The director mentions not wanting to deal with making sure everything was historically accurate, like the sets and the clothing and all that. I think the best way they used the 1940s feel is on the lighting. I'm kind of sad I didn't even notice directly, but once it was pointed out through commentary, I was like, shit, yeah, these are some strong colors. And it's one of those things that you gotta do, considering how wacky things will get soon enough in the film. A chest is found underwater. This chest contains the mask. And the first thing the mask does on its own is kill the guy. An accursed artifact it truly is. We are then introduced to our protagonist, Mr. Stanley Ipkiss. And one of the first things you see about him is that he likes cartoons. So things are just not going well for him.
Well, see, here's the thing. My very best girlfriend just came into town, and I know she would die to go to this. So could we maybe get an extra ticket for her? Well, I just can't let her sit home all alone.
Look, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just go with your friend?
Stanley, I couldn't do that.
No, come on.
Stanley, you are the nicest guy.
Stanley, nice guy Ipkiss, works at a bank, is single, and things are just not working out for him. I sure hope something green and mythical comes along to spice things up. Oh, it's just a woman. Hey, wait a minute, that's Cameron Diaz. Princess Fiona. One of Charlie's Angels. The bad teacher! Check this out. See that? Yeah, this is her acting debut. Early on in production. Yes, I'm going on a tangent. The crew was still looking for the leading actress to play Tina. The director had eyes on Anna Nicole Smith, who ended up turning down the role, so they went on to look through hundreds and hundreds of auditions. Cameron at the time was doing modeling, and when she did the audition, they really liked what she put out. She oozed a very specific charisma that was enough for them to keep an eye on her. Going through other auditions, they weren't hitting the marks like Cameron did. Through the regular process of auditioning, it took a while. Eventually, they decided to hit her up. It was funny because she wasn't exactly too interested in doing the audition, but I suppose when she got the part, she was all for it. It's some pretty crazy stuff, because to have this be your debut movie is insanely lucky. So Tina Carlisle shows in, wanting a new bank account. She sits at Stanley's desk and... Somebody shoot this guy. So Tina Carlisle sits at Stanley's desk and tries to open a new account. But we quickly learn that things are not what they seem. The bank is being scoped out by some gangsters, the leader being Dorian, played by Peter Green. However, he's not the Don. And what is transpiring is honestly a bit of a generic plot of mobsters fighting for the top and control of the city. But personally, I don't think you gotta dwell on it too much for a movie like this. Stanley and his weird friend decided to go to the Coco Bongo nightclub, but Stanley has to get his car. But his car isn't fixed, and his mechanics are assholes. So they give him a piece of shit car, and so he has to show up looking like a loser. and his friend ditches him. And Tina's there to see how much of a loser he is, so he goes home. But his car breaks down in the middle of the bridge, but it's not even his car either, and everything's gone wrong, and his city smells, and he probably shit his pants too. What the fuck else can Ah! A mask. Stanley Gipness comes back to his apartment, sopping fucking wet. And then his landlord reminds him that his life sucks and that he should cry. But instead, he decides to go to bed and watch cartoons, like a respectable human being. A little while after lazing about, he grabs the mask he took home and, as a joke, tries to wear it. Ew. Okay, I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about two key aspects of this film. First, Jim Carrey. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. This movie would not be the way it is without him. Jim really carries the movie here. The script was literally written for him. The production did have a few names in mind: Rick Moranis, Steve Martin, Robin Williams. Instead, they saw the white guy on In Living Color and decided his kind of acting was something they could use. So they had rewritten the script with him in mind, even before confirming him for the role. And when they handed Jim the script, he was ecstatic. Now, I'm not really particularly fond of Jim anti-vax, autism, a disease, Andy Kaufman possessed me, Carrey. Some of that stuff is just not okay. However, there just isn't a performance quite like this. Now, while Jim Carrey did his unique performance, it wasn't fully complete without the hard work of the animators. The digital effects work was done by two teams on The Mask: Industrial Light and Magic and DreamQuest Images. Sadly, DreamQuest Images is no longer active and was shut down in the 2000s. But know that their work lives on in movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, Gremlins, Sixth Sense, and many, many other films. Industrial Light and Magic is like the VFX department. When they were working on The Masks, they had about 30 movies on their resume. In 2024, that number is over 500. That's so much. Maybe too much. Pick any big Hollywood blockbuster, and there's an 80% chance that ILM has their hands in that. The Mask is one of the more rare projects for them, at least at the time, because this is purely a comedy, whereas other projects at the time they had were sci-fi and adventure. Slight anecdote. When I first saw this as a kid, like 4 or 5, I was actually scared of The Mask. But it was quickly mended as soon as I saw, because the mask jumped out the window and fell into the ground, becoming flat. And to my child brain, seeing that meant that I was safe, because it was a joke, and this is supposed to be funny, that kind of thing. And I guess child me was pretty glad. The Mask takes a stroll after killing a man's eardrums, and suddenly he comes across a nefarious gang of the night. In a deleted scene, they were introduced and bullied Stanley, but that's just a fun fact, not really important. The Mask pulls a slick one on them.
Sorry, wrong pocket.
That was improvised by Jim. And gives them a good scare. After that, he recognizes the immense power he possesses, to which he decides to attack the mechanics that wronged him earlier in the story. Stanley Whipwist wakes up in the morning thinking it was all a dream, but the police at his door suggest otherwise. So naturally, you want to toss the mask and not deal with it anymore, hoping that you never have to see it again. Okay. In the next scene, we see that the mechanics were given very painful and colorful injuries. A key moment to show you how the comic differs from the movie. Like I said, the injuries seemed comical because the effects of the masks in the movie can leave you operating on the same logic. In the comic, however, You operate on real physics, my friend. When the Mask, called Big Ed in the comics, attacks the mechanics, he leaves them dead and replaces pieces of themselves with auto parts in ways that I'm pretty sure I cannot show here on YouTube. And I'll be honest, I kind of like that aspect of the comic. That isn't to say I prefer it. Having the movie and comic have different interpretations just leaves more variety, and I am here for it. I'll talk about this more soon. At the bank, Stanley shows up exhausted, unsure of what to do, knowing what has happened. But hey, to him, the Mask is gone, so he doesn't have to worry about it. Suddenly, a reporter named Peggy strolls in, looking to get the scoop on the attack on the mechanics. Seeing as he was one of their more recent customers, she decided to question him. With a little bit of back and forth, you could assume that they got some chemistry going on. Peggy leaves telling Stanley that women are in fact looking for nice guys like him. In a different part of town, Dorian gets put in his place by the Don, hitting him with a golf club for trying to plan a side hustle in secret. Dorian will go through with the bank robbery, however, hopefully with nothing to fuck up the sting. Except Stanley lays in bed having a saucy dream of Tina, where he's just so swag and Chad-like. But as soon as he starts getting licked by Miss Carlisle, he wakes up to see his dog, Milo, who is doing the licking. Let's talk about him. Real name Max is the actor K9 who was highly respected and loved by the crew. He apparently hit all the marks and was just an overall energetic and obedient dog. Chuck Russell stresses that he treated this dog on equal standing with all the other actors, as he should. I heard that he wore a tuxedo at the premiere, but I have not been able to find any photos of that. Which is weird because the claim also stated that a lot of the paparazzi swarmed the dog to snap pictures of said tuxedo. Anyways, Lib Kiss gets out of bed and looks at a newspaper clipping of Tina he taped to his mirror. Fucking weirdo. He gets sad again and wants to feel cool. So bing bang boom.
Hold on, sugar. Daddy's got a sweet tooth tonight.
You know how I mentioned Dorian's little sting? Well, you see,
Can't make the scene if you don't get the green. I better make a little stop.
The funny Mask makes his appearance at the Coco Bongo, in a shot that required the limo to drive around 2 times. And old Big Green flaunts his little greens to cause a ruckus. Well, looking for this guy, Tina Carlisle is the performance for tonight. And the moment he gets a good look, he starts acting a damn fool. If you have any interest in the animation game, then the name Tex Avery probably rings some bells. But the main inspiration for the Mask's antics and personality was Screwy Squirrel, a character by Tex Avery, so says the director. The production was especially a fan of how mean and unabashedly wacky the cartoons were, to the point where in Screwball Squirrel, the cartoon, the characters in it try to beat up the cutesy Disney stand-in.
My cartoon would have been cuter.
Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, some of the locations in the movie have some fun info about them. The Coco Bongo is a dressed-up hotel lobby. The bank Stanley works at was just an abandoned LA warehouse from the 40s. And the mechanics garage is the same garage used in Ghostbusters.
Let's rock this joint.
Hey Pachuco is a really good song. It was like a small plant in my brain that eventually got me into loving jazz when I first saw this when I was a kid. The song is by the Royal Crown Review, and it's a song that alludes to the 1940 race riots in Los Angeles. Yeah, sorry, if you're one of those types that are like, oh, I don't want no politics in my media, or whatever, this ain't for you. So just go ahead and leave. For a little history, the Zoot Suit riots involved American servicemen and white residents attacking anybody who wore a zoot suit, because they were considered unpatriotic. And why is that? Well, that's because the zoot suits used a lot of fabric and materials that the government labeled as essential that they wanted you to donate to the military at the time for war effort. So a lot of the wearers of these zoot suits, mainly people of color, were often beaten by other citizens, by other people, and cops would just let this happen. And it's a whole issue that could just turn into a massive tangent, let alone an entire like college class on its own. But this isn't what this video is about. So I'll just end off the topic by saying ACAB. The song did play a part in the 1990s swing revival, where everyone suddenly got into neo-jazz with artists like the Royal Crown Review, Cherry Poppin' Daddies, and Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. Seems like a fun time. I wasn't alive around the time it happened. Even if I was, I would have been like a child, so it's whatever. After dancing with Tina and macking on her sensual style, Dorian and his gooners put an end to the party in a rather aggressive fashion. What ensues is a shootout with some of my favorite gags in the movie.
I want to know what my money is, and I want to know right now.
You've got 17.5% in T-bills amortized over the fiscal year. 8%.
The Mask makes his escape, and Dorian is forced to take the blame on the robbery. However, Detective Calloway sees some strange pajamas on the dance floor.
This is impossible.
Those pajamas are impossible. This actually happened.
Ipkiss.
Calloway goes back to Shitpiss's apartment for further questioning. He tells the detective that it wasn't him, and that someone took his jammies, which is enough to get Calloway off his back, for now. But he's already confident that Stanley had something to do with it. Meanwhile, Dorian hires a gaggle of hitmen to find the Green Goose running amok. Tipswitz comes to work late and immediately tells his boss to fuck off, because he's stressed. In the same moment, Tina also strolls in to talk to him about the mask guy. Stanley decides to set up a date for the two of them, ecstatic to get another moment with Tina, this time more intimate. But he is the Mask, and he's Stanley. What would happen if he revealed himself? Concerned about these troubles, he goes to the professor he saw on TV discussing masks, hoping he can offer some insight on this otherworldly thing. Dr. Newman, played by the Ben Stein, finds it to be Scandinavian, representing the god Loki, and doesn't believe there's anything unusual about it. There was actually an alternate opening that played into the Norse mythology. Going back, the movie opens with a diver opening the chest and getting bonked. A deleted opening involved Vikings hundreds of years ago sailing far from their homeland and leaving the mask on unknown territory, locking it in the very chest we see in the beginning. They declare the land cursed and leave, transitioning into Edge City. It didn't make the cut due to time and budget. The director felt that Loki was the more appropriate representation for the insanity of the mask, as he was indeed the god of mischief. In the comics, this was not the case. There were a few but important panels in the comics that showed the mask being worshipped and worn by an Amazon tribe. And the reason it ends up in the US is because of thieves that ambush the tribe and murder them, taking the mask away from them, unaware of the powers that are within. The comic writers themselves said it was intentionally left ambiguous, and they never really had any proper plans for the true origins of the mask. Back to the film, Stanley Hiptwist swears that the mask has powers, so he tries to put it on but ends up making a complete buffoon of himself. This disturbs the doctor, so he tells him to fuck off, but only after he advises him to go as himself and the mask. Calloway is informed that Ipkiss's fingerprints have been identified, so all eyes are on him now. Also, Doyle is there. Everyone say hi, Doyle. That night, Stanley meets up with Tina as himself, talking for a short bit, having a nice, somewhat romantic moment. But he gets nervous and decides to run away and come back as the Mask, who is sadly starting to put on his peppy pew routine. Get this guy out of here.
She is so coy.
I love it.
A running theme in a lot of the comics that happen in this movie is that constantly wearing the mask causes you to lose yourself. The mask always removes your inhibitions, but it takes away your humanity too, just more slowly after each time you wear it. The police intervene and now it's just them and the mask.
Freeze!
A lot of the visual gags involving CGI have been really funny and charming, I always like to say. And I think that this is due to the kind of synergy Jim Carrey and the animators at ILM had, intentional or not. Carrey's way of acting, one that often involves contorting his face and body in exaggerated ways, aided so much for the animators in turning each joke into the craziest bit that it could successfully be. The shots came out as good as they did as a dedication of the team and Carrey's determination to move just like a cartoon would. When Jim saw some of the final tapes for each of these gags, he was in awe, stating that it was exactly as he envisioned in his head. While the cops have Stanley at the park, Peggy decides to go check it out. In this scene with all the props, they had to cut holes in Carrey's pants, and 2 crew members had to hand the props to the actors through the pants, as opposed to using digital effects.
Picture of Kellaway's wife?
What?
Uh-oh.
Margaret! You son of a bitch!
Jeez, I figured you had a sense of humor. After all.
You married her!
That's gotta hurt.
After giving Kellaway an omega burn about his wife, Bro takes off and runs into downtown where he's greeted by the entire force. What is a single Caucasian man to do in this scenario? That's what all the white people do. Producers were adverse to this scene, by the way. They were scared that it was too weird, but the team fought to keep it in. Shooting this movie was rather straining because everyone had to work long nights and usually had to keep up their energy at 2 or 3 a.m. Hell, Jim Carrey had to fight a cold during this scene. They only had the one night to shoot, so it was a matter of we either get the shot or not. And Jim decided to push through it. It's like, yeah, that like you can't even tell.
They call him Cuban Pete. He's the king of the rumba beat. When he plays the maracas, he goes chick chicka-boom, chick chicka-boom.
So when the test screenings came out, everyone said that they loved the Cuban Pete number. And it was just this massive fan favorite scene. The Mask makes his escape off into the... Jesus. That scene was improvised and Jim didn't tell the lady he was going to do that. That sucks. And I wish that didn't have to be the case, because doing that is bad, guys. Off into the alley, Stanley Riptide forcibly removes the mask. Peggy suddenly shows up and saves him from the array of bullets coming his way. In a newspaper factory, he confesses all the details to her and admits he's losing control. Peggy consoles him and tells Stanley that he never needed the mask. The power was inside him all along.
Do you really mean that?
Actually, no.
Oh. In a sudden twist, it turns out Peggy was one of the hitmen hired by Dorian. And it was all a trap. This was very intentional on the director's end. He really wanted the seemingly seductive Batgirl to actually be the good-hearted one, and the seemingly innocent and honest woman to be just as skeezy as the city she lives in. I mean, I guess not that skeezy. She was just looking to pay rent. And she didn't want Stanley to get hurt, so... The goons threaten Stanley's life until he tells Dorian how it works.
I don't know. You just... put it on!
Dark clouds surround him as he makes the plunge into the powers of the mask and becomes Dark Dorian. Unofficial title. In a deleted scene, Dorian actually kills Peggy by throwing her into the newsprinter, but the result was still in a cartoon gag where Peggy ends up being printed on the newspaper. However, test audiences found it to be too morbid or grim for some reason. In the next scene, Dorian's gang raids Stanley's apartment to collect all the stolen bank goods.
Money better be here, Ipkiss. Or you can Ipkiss your ass goodbye.
Hey, that's pretty good. Then decide to toss Stanley to the police station since the cops don't know anything about the mask. Bubkiss gets put in the slammer with only his dog at his side. That is until the next day Tina decides to visit him. She expresses her feelings and thanks to him, telling him that he never needed the mask and that the power was inside him all along. She decides to take off, wanting to escape Dorian's wrath, but she gets caught, which causes Stanley to try and break out using his trusty canine Milo. Dorian's big plan is to blow up the charity event at the Coco Bongo. With the mayor and the Don there, It would cement his place as ruler of Edge City. A shootout occurs, but with the mask, Dorian is just too strong. And kinda ugly looking. If only there was a hero to stand up to this evil. A hero like, perhaps, Stanley Flipper is? In a classic cinematic scenario, the thugs round up the innocent bystanders and tie the damsel in distress to a bomb. To successfully save the day, Stanley is going to need to, and he just got caught. However, Tina Carlisle uses her wits and convinces Dorian to remove the mask for a kiss. The sucker falls for it and wham! All the bad guys leap for the mask as it flies to the sky. But what's this? A surprise appearance from Milo, the loyal dog! As Stanley tries to untie Tina in fighting Dorian, Milo puts on the mask and turns to... Sorry, I blacked out for a second. Stanley gets some punches in, but doesn't get Dorian to waver. That is until... Stanley reunites with Milo and retrieves the mask from him. When the mask is shot from his hand, he jumps for it, coming out of the fire as the mask once more. And like it was nothing, he pacifies the gunman, gets rid of the bomb, and flushes Dorian, Wile E. Coyote style. And he didn't even break a sweat. Stanley Ipkiss, having newfound inner strength, easily removes the mask. Before leaning into Tina, police enter the building and arrest the gangsters. Stanley and crew are praised for saving the day, with Dorian taking all of the heat for every crime committed by the mask, to Calloway's displeasure. Stanley and friends drive off to a bridge, which in reality was just the LA River, and decides he doesn't need the mask to be a better version of himself, and tosses it. Stanley's friend jumps into the water to grab the mask, but is beaten to the punch by Milo. Stanley and Tina finally share a kiss, and the movie ends. The messed up thing about the movie was that this character, Charlie, played by Richard Jeni, had to reshoot the ending because audiences weren't satisfied with Charlie grabbing the mask at the end. So he had to jump into the LA River twice. And that shit is nasty. And not only that, he had to shoot it again, but this time with the official ending of the dog being the one to leave with the mask. And as we all know, the sequel ends up having more focus on the dog. Truly, Richard deserved better. So that was The Mask 1994. What do I think of it? Well, considering that I've seen this movie around 20 times in my lifetime, I think it's safe to say I'm a fan. The gags are fun and iconic, and it may have played a role into my large interest in animation. Just a little bit. Take that as you will. The aesthetics and visual flair make it stand out among many, many other films. Do I have any criticisms? Of course I do. And Tina is kind of lacking in the personality department. I think they really wanted to stick with her being the good bad girl and nothing much else. She was just the woman for Stanley to win at the end. Though there would have been a chance to mend this if they had made a sequel where Tina gets the mask. I think a lot of what happens after the Cupid Pete number is a bit low, but I understand that after a huge set piece like that, you gotta simmer things down. But even up to the point when the finale, Stanley gets the mask back for one final time, it didn't really reach the heights it had done before. I really would have enjoyed it if, for the final act, the climax would have been the peak of the movie. I get it though, how the writers and the director really wanted Stanley to take on Dorian all by himself. I still think something could have been done to make the final act more bombastic. I know it's a bit trite, but often when I find myself rewatching this movie, I can kind of just start checking my phone after the Q and Pete number with just how much things have kind of slowed down. This is only minor though. I still enjoy it a whole lot. Another criticism I would offer is how kind of generic the magic was within you from the start lesson. I even think that kind of lesson's overplayed in the 90s when this released. But maybe it's more classic in that way. I'm definitely going to keep watching it if the occasion calls for it, flaws and all. If you want to dig a little deeper, you could say that this is... If you want to dig a little deeper, you could say this is about society. Yeah, you know, Stanley gets the mask, and suddenly his repressed urges of love, sex, and power come into the forefront. This is how it is because Stanley is a nobody nice guy. He has a job with a shitty boss, and he can't get a date. Living in Edge City sucks ass, where there are gangsters. The place smells, and his landlord shits on him. Living under these pressures of life, while in your 30s, can really get you to just build up some inner turmoil. So while greatness is inside you all along, the society still sucks. And that's all I got for the bit. Let's just move on. One thing that a couple of the filmmakers like to point out is that this is somewhat an indie film. It had a budget about $20 million, and given the B team from Industrial Light and Magic, they did all they could to make this movie as good as it was, running the big risk of using all this new technology at the time for a comedy. Before this, ILM was only ever hired for science fiction, action, adventure movies. This was one of the earliest times it was going to be used this way. But even with this being the case, it seemed like everyone involved had a lot of fun and were able to inject passion into it. The animators were having such a good time when the heads of ILM tried to pull some of the workers onto a different project. None of them wanted to leave the mask, so they had to be offered bonuses just to get them off from working on the mask. I really want to emphasize just how much work gets put into visual effects. If you've heard it time and time before, good, because you need to keep hearing it, and it needs to be cemented just how much you gotta appreciate this art. While the actors and directors got their gains, ILM got theirs as well. But how many of you even knew the name Industrial Light and Magic before this moment? And how many of you were aware of the amount of work they put into the last 50 years? Let alone a single name of any of the animators working in this studio. So, did any of that work pay off? Abso-fucking-lutely. The Mask was a giant hit, grossing $350 million, which today would be about $750 million. Everybody loved this damn movie, and everything about it. The actors, the effects, the jokes, the dog. Milo was adored so much more than the studios expected, they had to slap Max the dog on the DVD covers using a stock image. I just think that's funny. The one who got the most gain from this was in fact Jim Carrey. However, one movie was not enough to skyrocket him into superstardom. Rather, it took 3. In the single year of 1994, Jim Carrey starred in Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. All movies received praise and positive reception. With such an unprecedented output, there was no other outcome from this than Jim Carrey's ultra Hollywood fame. The same goes for Cameron Diaz. With her debut out and her charisma potent on the silver screen, she then began the path to become a bona fide actress. And it was all thanks to a comedy film based off a silly little horror comic. Now, we keep floating around this dang comic, throwing small facts and comparisons here and there. But what does happen in this comic? Well, the Dark Horse comic, the first story, is pretty much what the movie is, except of course several differences, like the aforementioned death and origins. We follow Stanley Ipkiss, who comes across the Mask at a shop. He's a depressed and angry man who hates his wife and is considerably more irritable. When he's big hit, he gets realistic injuries like bullet holes to the chest and face, blood and flesh splattered about, but they don't have any effect. The colors are phenomenal, and I'm a huge fan of the artwork. However, this story ends with Stanley being done in by his wife. It's pretty short, but the story continues in other issues. I only ever make it to The Mask number 4, because after that it doesn't really grab me. By then the Mask starts going to like 3 people in the same story, and all of the blood and gore is completely removed. Most likely due to the success of the movie that doesn't have any of that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just a simple preference. But, did you know, there was The Mask comic that came out before The Mask comic. It was called The Mask, spelled Masque, in 1987 by artist Mark Badger in Dark Horse Presents number 10. The Mask comes in with black and white panels and is about cops trying to find a serial killer that wears the distinct mask. It was heavier on the political side, and the major differences from all other mask media is that when someone were to come after the mask, a seemingly normal man, the pursuer would begin to hallucinate and the world around them dissolves into madness, which is an opposite effect on how nowadays we see the mask as a sole, chaotic entity, bringing madness into a grounded world. With the success of the film, you better believe there were more comic issues, more so in the crossover department. It was even a comic adaptation of the movie, and a comic adaptation of the cartoon series. Oh shit, the cartoon. So after the movie became a smash hit, and its popularity soared among all different graphics, New Line Television decided to produce an animated series for CBS. It would run for 3 seasons and 54 episodes. It was so heavily influenced by the movie that it just ended up reworking the plot of the movie to make it so that Stanley Ipkiss remained the protagonist and that the mask could work even during the day. It's pretty weird, and I'm not going to go too into it because I just want to focus on the film in this video. So for now, I'll just go over a few things. Of course, Jim Carrey wasn't going to reprise his role for the cartoon, so instead they got Rob Paulsen. And in my personal opinion, I think he kills it. He's got the dynamic range that really works for the mask's antics and disguises.
Nobody clears a room like you, Walter. Say, this place calls for more appropriate attire. Wardrobe!
This is very much a comic book show. It gives the masked supervillains to fight because they aren't going to show mob murders to kids, and it would probably be an easier way to keep them engaged, considering how strong the mask is. We've got super scientists, sorcerers, Walter, who was actually a really cool comic character. I'd be interested to see how he would have been adapted into live action, and there's even an Animaniacs parody.
She's Pinko, and I'm Snot. I'm not Pinko, Stinko! No, I'm Stinko. He's Pinko, and she's Snot. She's Snot what?
I love these guys, bitch!
One thing I do have to tell you about is that the animated series did indeed have a crossover. Jim Carrey's 1994 movies all got cartoons, and there are 2 episodes where the mask meets Ace Ventura, an episode for each respective series. They're mildly enjoyable. They involve finding animals. Alright, what's left? There's a board game. Don't got that. A video game. I haven't played it. What do James and Mike think?
I don't know where to go, but okay. You got that door.
I was getting so frustrated.
I want to see what all the moves are. Okay, so you can do the tornado thing.
Tasmanian devil.
So you got like a bunch of things.
How did you do that?
Oh, R.
Oh.
I'm trying,
it's like Super Metroid.
I'm trying every...
So the mask did well. It would have been ridiculous for New Line to not jump at this new opportunity for a sequel. It didn't take long for talks of The Mask 2 to get started. There was even a Nintendo Power ad promoting the contest to be in The Mask 2. Of course, that resulted in not happening, and the contest winner be sent a formal apology along with some goodies. But at the time, there were plenty of ideas on the table. Stanley could have gotten the mask back. It could have been given to Tina in a Las Vegas setting where Cameron Diaz was the star. And as I was recording this day of, I was informed of a video on YouTube that just shows what seems to be somewhat of a pitch for a Mask sequel. It has Revenge of the Mask on it, but the A is of the Eiffel Tower. So I guess a sequel in Paris was also an idea thrown around. And of course Jim Carrey and Milo were still on the cover. But at this moment, all I saw was the cover and the first page and nothing more. I'm hoping I can be able to see more as the channel continues, but yeah. The thing they liked about the mask was that it could go to anyone. One thing that has been on my mind with this is wondering what kind of legacy the mask has left behind. There's no doubt that the people who have seen it enjoy it. Jim Carrey is as big of a name as he is with the help of this movie. He went on to put the green skin back on his face once more for How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is one of my favorite Christmas watches. It's a strange movie. Which in turn got The Cat in the Hat made starring Mike Myers. The Mask's uses of CGI for comedy definitely turned the tide, and suddenly huge amounts of flicks began to use it for gags and slapstick, the majority being kids' movies. So, what has The Mask shown up today in this modern age of 2024? Well, there's that. That. Oh, and does this too.
Me only joy was watching Jim Carrey movies. Me watched The Mask 300 times. Somebody stop me! It probably why so well adjusted.
Jim Carrey wasn't even in Space Jam 2. But I could have sworn I saw him on a set putting on the makeup with Pennywise and the Joker. But I guess looking at it now, maybe it was just fake. I'm not sure. I mean, Space Jam 2 is a massive disappointment as it is. So I wouldn't be too surprised if it was some sort of cut content. I don't know. Fuck Warner Brothers.
Honey, I'm home.
I'm only going to talk about this once. After The Mask, in a long and egregious development, Son of the Mask came out. It was terrible. It had almost none of the same crew as last time, and it really did put a dent on the return of the property. At the very least, the comics haven't stopped trying. Dark Horse tried a minor run of itty-bitty comics that involved characters like The Mask and Hellboy to be introduced to younger demographics through the comics by being more lighthearted and kid-friendly. But those didn't go far. The main story of The Mask did have a new run that was just a commentary of the Trump election in 2016. I read it, and I don't really remember much of it. I believe it was alright. In the end of all of this, you gotta wonder, can The Mask come back on the big screen? It's hard to say. At the time of writing this, the film rights seem to belong to Warner Brothers, and that company has been on fire. And honestly, if it were to just collapse within the next year, I would not be surprised. I would say it's possible with a huge surge of 90s and 2000s nostalgia, but that would imply Jim Carrey would be coming back. But let's be honest, he's getting up there in years, and he's basically retired, barring the third Sonic movie. There is one saving grace in all this, however. No matter what happens, Dark Horse Comics will own the Mask story. And if WB were to just straight up explode, they absolutely could just find another company to make something. Hell, it probably doesn't even have to be a movie. It could be a TV show. Live action or animated. Maybe make it more accurate to the comics with some violence and gore. Or just make the same thing all over again. I don't know. The Mask exists. I could always just watch that movie again. But I'm not going to do that. For now, I'm just going to chill out. This has been a certified Univid. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.